Hi there, everybody in Moreland. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I am joined again by my wonderful mentor. We are going to be looking at INTAS Standard 6, 7, and 8. But before we begin, I just want to say a huge thank you to my mentor for being so incredibly supportive. I can be quite hard on myself sometimes and a little bit negative, especially after a lesson. So, again, thank you so much for your support, your help, your understanding, and your guidance. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I share the same weakness. Reality, maybe it's not a weakness. Being a bit hard on ourselves is important because precisely it's that self-flagellation slash hardness on oneself that actually promotes some growth. So
Growth and development.
takes some awareness. So
Yeah.
and that's a careful theme that differentiates proficientness from an outstanding teacher, right? Is the ability to be aware of where you're weak and how you can get stronger. Assessing. So self-assessment is the ability to self-assess effectively, being the groundwork for what's needed to assess students. Formatively, I think you were outstanding in keeping track of how kids were doing, as you have been with all of the other lessons. Variety of assessment instruments. I mean, what was a little bit different and new about this one was just the use of GimKit to assess how well kids had responded to the to your lecture about different kinds of media, which forms were reputable and which were not, which were reliable, and so you actually had an active tech-based context,
Yes.
right? Which is
Yes.
another element on the rubric, that needs inclusion, and I thought you integrated that quite well, and all the data that you gathered from the student from student performance is the analytics are gathered, and you've showed me before we started. Mr. Hoods showed me actually the data from each student, which was useful. And interestingly, and this ties into the ability of a teacher to adapt on the fly to needs within the classroom. I watched Mr. Hoods go around and take pictures of each screen, as well as pen in hand, making notes, monitoring how students were doing. For example, you unfortunately didn't have a tablet for each student. Students were working in pairs, and there's an argument for the importance of cooperative learning. That you have to share together. You have to make this work.
Absolutely.
And as an educator, seeing, okay, well, how can these two students actually learn together, share together? That's part of assessment.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And as we discussed earlier, there was one student who is exceptional, who did get 100 for the test.
Mhm.
However, I felt that his partner hadn't contributed as much, and I scored him accordingly.
Right. Okay. That was important to see, because sometimes with the sharing part, there could have been there could have been some discrepancies. How much time was spent? So.
And Mr. Mentor, if I can say, before our discussion today, you did mention something quite interesting about my choice in choosing GimKit as opposed to something that would be more academically based, like Quizlet or perhaps WordWall. Would you like to comment on that?
I think that there's a variety of programs like Quizzes.
Yes.
Quizzes is a favorite in the U.S. Apparently, there's just lots of
Quizzes.
It has this shareability, I guess, between. There's lots of different districts that are using it, but I mean the gamification part is missing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in terms of sensitivity to learners' needs and providing some, how can we say, brain break-esque balance between some of the heavier duty reading and so forth, one could argue that that would help learners actually engage with the text more fully once they get it. So that gamification part of GimKit, I get.
Yeah.
You know, however, there were times when I was looking at this, it's like, wait a minute, this looks like Super Mario. What's going on? You know, and you know, I'm an old fart. You know, I'm pushing 60, and I've been doing this for a long time. So the gamification thing is still a bit new to me. But these are the waters that you've been swimming in for some time.
Yeah, they are.
So you know, granted, there's there's different ways to skin that cat.
Yeah.
Keep moving on with the assessment part, because of the 3 standards, I think this it's entwined with all of them, but it's essential. So I'm going to spend a bit more time.
Okay.
Another effective part of the assessment was formatively and brilliant was getting the students, upon presenting the bits of text that they had selected for their respective communication media format, be it vlog, be it radio news, be it TV news or podcast.
Yeah.
When the students were reading, you gave all of the students a glow and grow feedback form, and so that students had to evaluate how their peers were doing, delivering the text. And I thought that was great, because it all necessarily made the students be a bit reflexive. Like, how am I going to be doing, or how did I do? How can I do better? Yeah. Right. Along with, you know, in a stroke of genius, forcing students to pay attention to their peers.
Yes.
Right.
Active listening.
Right. So listening actively built into this assessment task. So that was great. You know, I thought.
However, what you said to me before we started recording, and I think it was a fantastic piece of advice as far as constructing the presentation plan was concerned. Again, I gave the kids a blank canvas to write whatever they would like to for their presentation plan. And you suggested that I give some more sentence structure.
Right.
So that they're able to, again, we don't have a lot of time to get this done. It's something that I should have thought of, and something that I think I could improve on in the future by giving them a little bit more structure, because unfortunately, a lot of the presentation plans, when they were filled in and completed, were quite thin.
Right. And as an ELL guy, as ELL guys, I mean, you have to be specific. But
I do.
But in some recent podcast listening, I heard some academics talking on about the importance of being specific.
Yeah.
You know, just reminding teachers that we do need to be specific. We need to give examples. Now, if you didn't have time to give it orally, then putting into the text and saying, hey kids, you got to read this.
Yeah.
The grammar, the grammar that I want, the sentence patterns that I want are here.
Or I could have sent it home beforehand, or put it on a Google form and let them have some idea of it beforehand, or let them have more time with it as homework afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
It's something I can definitely try to improve on.
Yes, indeed. Sure. That's moving on to the assessment. And in terms of the the final assessment, which is going to happen, once this project is done.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And the project. Let's move on to planning for instruction and instructional strategies. I think it's brilliant that you've taken this project based goal and tied up all of your educational focus and objectives towards this end, because it's something practical. It's something that kids can sink their teeth into. I mean, it's full of pedagogical import of meaning. Kids are engaged. They have something practical to focus on, and that's evidence based.
Yeah.
Right. I think the way you structured the lesson, you plan to use different formats. So you had the tech format at the beginning with GimKit. You had an opportunity prior to that, the PowerPoint with the initial presentation, and then the hands-on reading of the text.
Yeah.
Where kids were working together in their groups
and practicing together.
Right. So again, this traditional model of presentation, practice, and then integration. So those three phases were clearly there in the instructional plan. And one question I did have is how you used your formative assessment, your experience from video lesson 3 to shape your instruction plan for lesson 4. Well, I know we're running out of time, but this is important.
It's quite all right. Well, that was one of the main reasons why I decided to go for GimKit for this one, because as you know, I did Quizlet, and then just a big multiple choice for video 3. So that's why I wanted it to be in this form. And also, considering what advice you gave me for lesson 2 and 3, trying to get kids to do more writing in class, I tried to incorporate that into the presentation plan and into the grows and glows form, and to get them to do more collaboration together, to get some more sense of teamwork, and to get each group working as well as they could, and working towards a final presentation together.
Great. Yeah, I think you did that. You did that quite well. That integration.
And also trying to, again, I feel that I am supporting every student as much as possible. One of the main things with keeping the name list at the front of the class and giving kids points for when they're talking is so that I can see who isn't talking, who isn't contributing to the class, so that during that time group work I can walk around and speak individually to each of those students.
Right, and that's the part of the assessment piece I missed was that the ongoing individual log that you've been keeping, and I've seen all the data that you have, which you've generously agreed to share with me.
Great.
To augment my humble set. Good. So moving on finally to the last element of instructional strategies, the final INTAS standard. So how do you feel about the variety of instructional strategies that you used, and have you stimulated curiosity? Differentiating proficient to outstanding.
Well, the thing
probing for student understanding and stimulating curiosity.
What I do with each one of these INTAS standards is I always read outstanding, what I need to achieve for outstanding. So I read that, I put notes down, and that's how I structure my lesson plan. I try to check all the boxes as best as possible. And if I'm not able to do it in the classroom environment, I'm trying to check those boxes on the lesson plan. So hopefully everything is covered. As far as variety of instruction, I think that I have checked that box. I feel that kids are doing lots of different forms of assessment, lots of different forms of teacher-student interaction, lots of different forms of student-student interaction, and getting as much variety as possible out of every lesson.
Right, and I agree. And the key factor is incorporating technology, having the different kinds of activity, individual, group, having tech-based content, visual content versus the reading part, the group combining of elements during the lesson, so putting things together. I think the only part that's missing, and part of that is a function of time, your Achilles heel would just be the writing part, and it's the bane of all of us.
Yeah.
But
the kids need more writing time, but we don't have more writing time. So again, we do the best we can under the circumstance.
Great.
Yeah.
Mr. Hutz, I know you need to go, so thanks everyone for your time.
Can I get a pow? And again, thank you so much to my mentor for his advice. I really genuinely appreciate it. As you can hear, he is a little bit sick, so I doubly, triply appreciate his contribution this week. So
last time was mosquitoes, this time it's just the common cold.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.